All right, well, it looks like we've got some people on already. I will give it a few more minutes, or like 1 or 2 more minutes, and then I'm going to start my introduction for today's webinar. So if you just hang tight here, we will get started shortly. If you are having trouble hearing or seeing our title card here, you can submit a question over on the right-hand side in the question box. Okay, well, I'll get started on my introduction and then we will see if a few more people trickle in. As a reminder, we'll be recording this, so you will get sent this afterwards if you have to drop off at any point. So, good afternoon. Happy last day of March. Hopefully all of your springs are looking a little bit less snowy than ours here in Wisconsin. But I'd like to thank you for joining us today for this webinar, Making Across the Curriculum. My name is Amelia Haglund. I'm the content strategist at Demco, and I'm going to be moderating today's session. Just a little housekeeping here first before I introduce our presenter, Nick Provenzano. Again, you'll see on your right-hand side a place where you can enter questions that you might have, and we'll try to get to them within the session as time allows. The session is being recorded, and the recording along with any slides will be available in about a week, and we'll follow up with an email when you can access that. We're also being monitored on Twitter, so please feel free to tweet about today's presentation. You can use the hashtag DemcoIdeas, tag at the Nerdy Teacher and Demco, and we can keep that conversation going. So with that, I will introduce our presenter, Nicholas Provenzano, who you may already know as the Nerdy Teacher across social media. He is the Technology Coordinator and Makerspace Director at University Liggett School in Michigan. He is also an accomplished author, speaker, and consultant. You can find his content at thenerdyteacher.com, as well as a range of educational websites, including demco.com. He has been featured on CNN.com, The New York Times, Education Week, and other media outlets. He is the author of Your Starter Guide to Makerspaces, The Maker Mentality, and Beyond the Poster Board. And we have been very happy to have him share his ideas on the Demco site, where you can read his blogs. You can also follow him and Demco on social media for additional thoughts and ideas. And we're really excited he could be here today, taking some time off from his spring break to talk about his thoughts on how making can support a broader curriculum. And so without further ado, Nicholas, you can take it away.
Hey everyone, it's so great to be here virtually and to have you here virtually. And for those of you that are going to watch this back in the recorded version, thank you for taking the time to hang out with us. I'm really excited to talk about making across the curriculum. You know, one of the things that I hear often about making is, well, that's great, you know, you're a science teacher, but I teach English, I teach social studies, you know, I teach math, you know, where does that fit? What type of tools am I going to use to help support my students making in my classroom? So in this session, I'm really going to spend some time talking about some examples that I've seen teachers use, that I've used in my classroom to support making in their classroom, as well as some of the tools that have been used that I've used, some that you can go right to demco.com and order for yourself. So I'm really excited to share just a whole list of things here, and definitely put your questions into the question box there, and then we'll talk about those questions you have at the end so I can make sure I touch base with everyone. And again, if you're listening to the recorded version and have questions, again, tweet me at the Nerdy Teacher. I'd love to connect with you and answer any questions that you might have. So let's get rolling. So first thing I'd like to do is sort of start off with a shared definition. So making is the creation of something new that was not there before. I know that's insanely broad, but I like it broad because it's inclusive. it's important to understand that all types of making are making. And so as a teacher, we don't want to have kids feel like, oh, what I'm doing is not good enough. Well, I don't want you as a teacher to feel like, well, that's not real making because I don't have a 3D printer or I'm not using a laser cutter. That doesn't mean you're not making it at all. It could be knitting. It could be just drawing and creating using paper and cardboard. It could be any of those things. So it's important to understand that when I talk about making, I'm talking about the creation of anything that really demonstrates what a student understands. So when we talk about Maker Ed, we're talking about allowing students to create, to demonstrate understanding. So the idea of traditional education is that a student will consume content and then they will share that content in an essay or in a multiple choice test, and they'll fill in little bubbles with the number 2 pencil. Very, very traditional sense of education. So with Maker Ed, the argument that we're trying to make is that we want students to create something to demonstrate the understanding. So they've consumed information, but now they're creating something new to demonstrate their understanding of that information. So for me, that's the huge, marker for Maker Ed is what are the kids creating? So it's not just creating for creating's sake, which can be fun, and I love to craft and woodwork and stuff like that for fun. But in education, we want the kids to create something to demonstrate their understanding of that content that you've covered in class. So what do you want to make to demonstrate your understanding of the material? That's the question we want to give to kids. And it can be a very scary question, to be perfectly honest, because so many kids have figured out school to the point where if you ask them something like this, they'll be very confused. They're not used to being asked their opinion. What do you want to do? How can you do it? It's actually really crazy for them. So it's the simplest question, truthfully, but a lot of people get anxiety over, well, how do I make this happen in my classroom? So when we look at the different things that we could possibly do, so we talk about STEAM, STEM, science, technology, engineering, the arts, which I'm a big fan of, mathematics, and we see that making and Maker Ed fits really easily into a lot of these categories, right? In science, where we have kids making pop bottle rockets, right? And it's very simple projects where they add cones. A kid here 3D design some tail fins that weren't quite as aerodynamic as we would have hoped. This one is a pretty straightforward craft stick bridge building in a science class. These students of mine built one using glue and 170 craft sticks and held over 235 pounds. A simple egg drop challenge. Again, a nice science type of class, or it could be just a fun project for kids to do. But again, these things lead themselves to this. Animal cell project, I think a lot of us remember these growing up or have seen these in the hallways for our students. My physics class in mechanical engineering, a mousetrap car race, so making cars race using just their mousetraps. This is super crazy advanced spatial reconstruction and an anatomy class where we 3D printed skulls. Or drawing a maze for Sphero for coding and just general math in terms of measurements and things like that. Those are all pretty standard in the sense that people expect to see that in the sciences. And that's where the A for STEM comes in, right? STEAM. Yes, I drew that in all of its glory, my wonderful artistic skills right there. Make room for the A in STEAM, right? We want to have the arts involved. And so when we look at the arts, I'm really looking at all of those other content areas outside of the traditional science classes and math classes. So we want to see what that could look like. And I've got some examples. We look at ELA, social studies, foreign languages, and there's so much more you can do in any of these classes. A great ELA example, and I love this one so much, is asking students to demonstrate what they understand. And so in my class, we had spent time reading Gothic literature, and after talking about the individual pieces that make up Gothic literature and what makes it truly special in all of the genres of literature, I asked the students, okay, your challenge is now to demonstrate your understanding of these concepts we've covered in a way that is meaningful to you. And so that opened the door to these students. So some kids could either write music, some kids could paint, some kids could make a comic book, some kids could do a puppet show. It's whatever they want, as long as that they're demonstrating their understanding of these items. And so I give the kids the rubric of, these are the things I'm looking for. This is how well I have to be able to see them. And they're off to the races. So a student, Nicole Scaglio here, did some of the most amazing work I had ever seen in this project. And I just love it to this day. She decided to do photography. And so for her, she wanted to shine a spotlight on these different elements in a very visual way. And so when you look at these photos, this one is to represent insanity. It's a common concept that you'll see in Gothic literature. And this photo and the makeup that she did of her sister speaks volumes to exactly what this is. This one is the sense of impending doom. I love this photo because she had this great story behind this photo. She's like, Mr. P, it took me hours to get this photo because the sun was covered up by the clouds and I wanted the sun to be perfect because I wanted the shadows of the branches on the side of the garage, and the wind was blowing too hard and not enough because I wanted the hair just to blow just right. It was this crazy story that she was telling me, all about taking a photo to demonstrate one concept of Gothic literature. She spent this time and dove deeply into these concepts to understand them in a way that a multiple choice test could never show us. When we look at other ways to approach it, in the foreign language class, I love this example where I got a quick shot of these students in 8th grade that were using the green screen to recreate the SpongeBob SquarePants opening in Spanish. So they wanted to demonstrate their understanding of what they've covered in Spanish class by creating sort of a fun, silly video of recreating the SpongeBob SquarePants song. It's something simple, something for those kids that they were able to really embrace and really explore what that language meant and what they understood of that language at that point. Love in social studies, a lot of people think in social studies that it's very tough to do project-based learning, but classes cover so many exciting parts of the world in history, and having kids create artifacts that demonstrate their understanding or have them research elements of world history on their own and allow them to create something to demonstrate what they learned based on their research. And so students creating boats and students creating the Sphinx and then giving their whole extra report on what it means and why its value in the Egyptian culture. And in the arts, the general arts, this is a super crazy one. The art department, the theater department, excuse me, really, really, really needed a severed head for a production. And so we used a 3D scanner and actually scanned the student's head, and then the theater department painted it. And so they have this extremely creepy head as part of the theater department now. But the students had to sort of do tons of research on this process and how are we going to create this? Is this going to be paper mache? They went through all of these different versions trying to fully understand what it is they needed to do. And they came to this conclusion that if we want this to be really the best thing that we can have, we need to 3D print this. And so they did all their research and they came together and they showed us and they did this wonderful print. And they have 2 of them. You always got to have a backup, right? In the theater world, you always got to have a backup. So we have 2 of these lying around. And so it was fun for them to sort of explore and look at what that means and how that can be used in sort of that theater department and in that education process. It's another art project for students. It was a senior year. He used the laser cutter. And so these were single lines that he had drawn, and then we used them in the laser cutter. And then he took different types of stain, wood stain, and actually recreated himself using those different colors. And I love it because it's such a crazy, crazy image left to right. What simply, shading and different colored stains can actually do and bring to life something that is almost impossible to see on the left-hand side. The thing I love too is design thinking challenges. You can bring those to any classroom really, just to help them with the process of problem solving. I think that's really important. I also love to do newspaper shoe design challenges. It's a very, very simple challenge. I do it with adults, I do it with teachers when I work with schools across the country, and I do it with students in my class, where students are given 1 foot of tape and 2 sheets of newspaper, and they have about 30 minutes of total time with design time and build time to create a shoe. And I love it because it's very different, it's fun, it gets everybody giggling and laughing, and you can come up with some really crazy, great designs, as you can see here. I love the wedge on the right. The students used 1 sheet just for the sole, but then used all the other one to pack underneath to give them a really nice big sole to create a paper wedge, which is super impressive to me. Another way to really bring project-based learning and Maker Ed into your classroom is Genius Hour. So for those who aren't familiar with Genius Hour, it's definitely worth exploring in tons of detail, and I would highly recommend you check out my site, look at any of my books that provide tons of examples, and really if you did a Google search on Genius Hour or 20 Time, you'll find tons of great resources there. But what it is giving students a piece of your, for me, when I did 20 Time, it was work week. Every single Friday, students were given an opportunity to explore something that was interesting and new to them and learn it. And so over the course of the year, students were given every Friday to sort of explore and learn. And at the end, they would give like a TED style talk about what they had learned. And so here's just one of so many amazing, wonderful examples that I could share. Jacob said he wanted to build a boat. That was Jacob's pitch to me. He's like, I want to learn to build a boat. I said, okay, that's pretty cool. Like, why? He goes, I've always wanted to, and my grandpa, he's really good with tools, and he can help me do it, and it'd be a cool way to like hang out with him and do something neat. It's like, wow, your grandpa's good with tools. Does he have experience building a boat? He goes, well, no, he's good with tools. He used to work at NASA. Like I always laugh, when I think about that, because this man, I imagine, has multiple PhDs and tons of higher education, worked at NASA, and his grandson refers to him as, my grandpa who's good with tools. And so I said, okay, if this is what you want your project to be, go for it. So he spends the whole year, and during this process, he has his ups and his downs, and at the end, as he gives us talk about what he learned, he had said, of all the things that I learned how important it is to never give up. There were so many times I wanted to quit. And my grandpa told me this amazing story where when he worked at NASA, he wanted to quit because they were frustrated landing a person on the moon, which we all remember was not a super easy process. And he asked for a transfer and left that division and went to another division in NASA. And within the year or so, they put a man on the moon, and he missed out on being on that team. And he told his grandson, like, it's one of the biggest regrets of my life is because I didn't see it through and I let my frustrations get the best of me. And so Jacob finished the boat, and I promised him I'd get into this boat with him. You can see me all white knuckled holding on there. And his mom was there. She was like crying, taking pictures. This awesome moment. And, this was such a phenomenal moment for Jacob. And a few years later, he sent me an email and he said, I want to let you know I got into University of Michigan's engineering college. And the people there said that I was the only student to ever write an essay that their English class was the reason they wanted to be an engineer. So there's this like amazing moment, right? As teachers, we get to hear those stories. We're so lucky. But sometimes giving kids an opportunity to explore learning in ways that are meaningful and allowing them to create can lead to things you won't expect. Nicole, in her photography of the crazy photos for the Gothic literature, turned out to love photography, so much so that she took photography classes based on the feedback everyone gave her in class and her amazing photos. And by her senior year, she was winning state prizes, awards for her photography. And so sometimes giving kids these opportunities to just create and to make opens up doors for them. And I think our job as teachers is to provide as many doorways as possible for our students to walk through. And sometimes it's just giving them an opportunity to create. Just consuming and regurgitating isn't going to help our students moving forward. They need to be able to look at situations and create something, a solution to this problem. And the problem can be as simple as, I don't know if you understand the content, prove it. That's the problem, right? That's like a real life problem that they have to solve. Another example I love to do in my class is a Sphero demolition derby. Kids design their own little solo cups and have a balloon on it, and they have to put pins and design with a piece of cardboard how they're going to make this happen, what's going to be their approach, and we have a little demolition derby. So this design challenge, again, is something I do in my design classes with my my seventh and eighth graders. It's really successful in getting them to think through the process of solving problems. So I know I've thrown a lot at you in terms of different content areas, and you might be thinking, but what about my class, or what about this class? And so, there are tons of examples out there, and I'm happy to connect. I can do all day with example after example after example. Math teachers that use Scratch to talk about XY coordinates on a plane. And so students create their own little Scratch games. And so I remember just graphing paper, that gray paper with the green lines. That's how I learned points, and it was awful. Watching a group of sixth graders learn about XY coordinates on a plane by plotting their little character from scratch along the computer screen is phenomenal. What a great instantaneous understanding of how moving plus and negative on an XY plane can really bring something to that learning experience. And again, the kids are creating something in that process to show that they understand how to move things around. So what tools can help make this a little bit easier? So these are tools that have to be confined to a library makerspace, a specific makerspace, your classroom. These can be things that are kept in a bin in the back. These could be things that are wheeled in and out of a cart, some of them. Some of these are digital, so they can be anywhere, whatever you are. So take a look at these tools, and you'll see some goodies in here that you recognize. You'll see some ones that are brand new, but this is not an all-encompassing list. This is definitely only scratching the surface based on what I've used and what I've seen work with kids, really K through 12. So first and foremost, your two best buddies, cardboard and duct tape. You can never have too much cardboard. You can never have too much duct tape. It's one of the things I learned right away running the makerspace is that I ran out of duct tape around May, and we had a month left to school, and it was a nightmare. So I always have tons of duct tape on hand in a variety of colors and patterns for kids to do a wide variety of projects and fun things. Some just like to make art with them, like they'll make flowers, they'll make wallets. Sometimes it's just holding their pieces of cardboard together to make another project. Cardboard and duct tape, especially, in a school, the larger you are, the more likely you are just to have a supply of cardboard. So I highly encourage you to go and get cardboard, and also get some cardboard cutters, electrical, mechanical scissors, essentially. You can find them. They're super great. Makes cutting them significantly easier. One of the things that you can go along with this and utilizing with ton of the tools of Strawbees. I love Strawbees. I got a whole set through Demco, and they have some new kits out there they should definitely check out. I love Strawbees because it's just a very simple, quick way for kids to build, really, visualize some of the projects that they have in their head. And so Strawbees is another excellent tool. Their connectors are great in a wide variety to get them moving and moving along. So you can actually have moving pieces in them, which I super love. But it gives kids just an opportunity to build something to keep their hands busy, right? And we want kids to sometimes work through a problem. And something as simple as straws from Strawbees can actually get that done. Make do, I love. And make do is great, especially for elementary, lower L, when you don't want them to have cardboard cutters. You don't want them to be using tons of tape. This is great because it's reusable. It's super wonderful for the environment. I prefer it when my kids use the screws and the saws and the screwdrivers to put make do together, because it saves them tons of duct tape, which is just wasteful, right? And it's not something you can recycle, and so it's not super wonderful for the environment. But sometimes you need to use it for certain projects. But make do is great for those. Oh, I want to put these two pieces together. I want it to articulate, maybe move an arm up and down. That's what's awesome about make do, is that it really, really gives you an opportunity to save some of that money on duct tape and to some really great things for the environment, which I super big fan of. But picking these up on Demco, was super great, and I ordered like 2 or 3 kits of them because I wanted to have enough for all of my kids to be used them at the same time, and it was a great decision. And to this day, kids love just to take them and pop them in, and it's great for sometimes the smaller pieces of cardboard for just little quick little projects that the kids want to put some things together. Glue guns and glue sticks, you can never have enough glue sticks. Just like I ran out of duct tape, I ran out of glue sticks around the same time. Horrible mismanagement on my part. You got to have your glue sticks, and so I have huge bulk purchases that I made that I keep all of those extra glue sticks on hand because, sometimes you need to get things assembled quickly. So it's great for prototyping when you're just trying to stick some things together to get a sense of what it'll look like. I tell the kids, glue is wonderful, but glue is for final projects because you have to let it sit and dry. And so it's not something that you really want kids to build something and then sit and literally watch glue dry. Hot glue is wonderful because it's quick and it'll stick together. And if it doesn't look just right, depending on the materials you're using, you just pop them away from each other and try again. So it's nice in that sense that it's good for quick, sort of rapid prototyping, and I definitely recommend it. Makey Makeys, love Makey Makeys. So many great things that you can do with Makey Makeys. Making just simple controllers is something I have an example here for. I love to showcase. It's a little controller for any type of games you can find online, and it's a fun project for kids. We use it in our science classes to teach about conductivity, and math classes for the games that they did on the XY coordinate. They can actually build their own controller. There are so many great projects that you can do. Colleen Graves is an amazing person. She does a lot of the lessons for Makey Makey. You can definitely check her out online. Colleen Graves is amazing, filled with wonderful resources. They have a group on Facebook you can check out as well. But their STEM kit is what I have 2 of them actually, because we use them in so many of our different classes at any given time. It's so wonderful to have them as a part of the class. And something that's very easy for kids to use because they're very familiar with how this works and really how they could use them to the best of their ability. Along those same lines are microbits. Microbits are sort of like Makey Makeys, except that they have these inputs with the A and B buttons, and they actually have these little LEDs, so you can actually program lights. You can actually just connect with alligator clips and create some really fun type of games using Makedo, which again is completely free to use. So if you don't even have a physical microbit, if you actually go to makecode.microbit.org, you can actually use a virtual microbit, which is phenomenal. So you can actually even get a sense of what things will do and what they'll look like by actually putting the code together and seeing it virtually. This was great for when I would have students that were out for COVID, or when we were hybrid learning and there were some kids who just didn't have access to the microbits. I couldn't get it to them, or they couldn't come and pick it up fast enough. This was wonderful because it allowed even those kids that were hybrid at home the opportunity to still use microbit and still code and see it do the things that it was supposed to do. So that's another great thing I loved about the online version of it. And kids were able to create some really fun games. For those of you that remember going to the carnival, you would have that little rod that you would, a little hoop on it. You would try to move it through the wire without touching the sides and setting off the alarm. The kids actually created their own versions of those games, and they were super fun. And they just had a great time solving these problems as part of a design thinking process. And so these kids, as they were demonstrating over and over again, sort of their understanding of how the code works, how the microbit works, how conductivity works, right? They're demonstrating this by creating these different games to really showcase their understanding of all those different elements. Yarn, can never have enough yarn. Other type of crafting tools like this. I've got tons of yarn in my space. Years ago, I used to have a kid who just loved to come and knit in the makerspace. That's what they used to like to do. They knitted, and it was amazing. It was something that was very calming and peaceful for them, and it was something that at one point they did a knitting project for a different class. This was their time to work on that. So they loved to knit. She learned from her grandma, and something that she just loved to do. So something as simple as like basic crafting supplies can be great. art scraps, any of those things. I find it very hard to throw anything out in a makerspace craft-wise. Everything can be reused to the very, very last little piece of glitter, I think. And so we want to give people those opportunities to really use whatever materials they have and not waste anything. And so I spend a lot of time talking to kids about utilizing materials, not wasting materials when they sort of plan out what they're doing. And that's an important part of the process, is just having those conversations with kids so that they have a better understanding of sort of sustainability. And for me, I'm very honest with kids with budgets. I go, listen, if you cut 10 straws and only use 5 of them and throw the rest away, I'm like, those straws are coming out of the budget. Someone else can't use those straws and those materials. So really, kids have been trained really well about saving all of those things. Like, can we save this? Can we use this? Can we put this in the bin? And just sort of having a bin that collects all the bits and scraps, because you never know what a student will want or need for a project. Dry erase supplies, gotta have them. Dry erase surfaces, I highly recommend. I got these tables that are in our design space from Demco that are dry erase tops, and so my kids do so much planning on these tops. And whenever we have 5th graders visit the middle school where the makerspace is, and I tell them the desks are dry erase tops, they get so excited. Their whole life they've been told not to draw on their desk, and they're going to come to a room and be able to draw on the desk. For them, it's life-changing the way they respond, it would seem. But it's great for those kids that love to just get their ideas out just right away on the table. And I'm that type of person. So I'll sketch it all out, and then I'll take those ideas and I'll put them in my notebook, and then I'll go from there. But dry erase supplies for markers, for boards, go into your local hardware store and cutting out pieces of a bathroom wall. I can't think of it, but it's got that shiny surface. You can draw on those and cut those up into little tablets for the kids to draw on and sketch on. Great uses for dry erase, like highly recommend it. Big one when we talk about making, you always get this question of like 3D printers. What should we get? Well, I am an advocate for the 3D 45 for Dremel, and the main reason for that is that it is so easy to use and the print jobs are phenomenal. What it boils down to for me is that I need to think about what tools I recommend are based on someone with little to no experience. So while there are definitely higher end, way more expensive 3D printers out there, those ones tend to require a ton more knowledge and have a ton more issues with them. I've had a Dremel printer. It started with the 3D20, and then it's the 40, and then it's the 45, since the original 3D20. And over all of these years, and it has easily been 8 years, maybe a little bit more, I've had one problem. And I called customer support, and you're getting a hold of Dremel, which is in Wisconsin. I got a hold of them right away, and it turned out user error. I made a mistake when I was adjusting something, and that was it. It's the only problem I've had in all of that time. Everything is built in. It's web-based, the printing, so you just do it online. You can send the print job, and it'll connect and print right from your computer. And then when you're done, you get emailed a time-lapse video of the print job, which I think is just super neat. It's just a nerdy thing for me, but it's great. So when you purchase it, it'll come with filament. It'll actually come with some test prints that you can try everything out. It's auto leveling. It's just so nice. All of those things that bigger printers that frankly are way more expensive require from a person, the 45 does not, and I highly recommend it across the board. It's got sensors in the filament, so it adjusts all of the settings. If you have a different type of filament, PLA, ABS, it changes all of those settings. The temperature, the bed print, heated temperature, all of it. I couldn't be happier about that. So that's always my big recommendation when it comes to 3D printing is this. So you can definitely check that out. You can order those on Demco too. It's where I got mine. I have 5 in my makerspace now. I think I have 5, and they're used regularly, and it's been great. So I highly recommend them. Going down something a little bit more simple, things like LEDs and copper tape, and then batteries, paper circuits. Having kids create things, paper circuits, having kids just sort of understand basic circuitry is something great to have in a makerspace, something to have access to for kids who build projects, kids that want to make light up elements to their makey-makeys for projects, kids that want to create different things. Really in science classes, we see a lot of use of these, and sometimes just in crafting, giving kids the opportunity to make interactive greeting cards, Mother's Day cards, holiday cards, and things of that nature, has turned out to be really, really good and really, really helpful to a lot of kids. This is a big one of the newest additions to our makerspace. And so if you're really looking to take your makerspace, your school to just a completely different level, you want to check out the Flex Farm from Fork Farms. So it's a hydroponic system, and we've had it since I think September, October, and we have grown so much lettuce and basil, like a ridiculous amount there. You can sort of see in those images. There's me, that's some basil, and those are the roots of the basil going all the way down. So for those of you not super familiar with the hydroponic system, no dirt involved in the process. You start them off as seedlings, you put them in what's called rock wool, you put them in those little slots that you can see sort of in there, and then the water cycles through, and then you have different things to add to the water to get the pH balance just right, different nutrients. But essentially over time with the grow light in the center, and you set the timer, and you just sort of walk away. Just make sure the water level, you check it every few days so that doesn't get too low for the filter that's pumping it around. And you will grow just some of the best tasting lettuce I have ever had. And I know it sounds crazy, but just super crisp. And the basil as it was growing, if you just go through and you move and check on some of the plants, just the whole room filled with the smell of like fresh basil. Super crazy. I was just down in Jacksonville working with an amazing school, and they put in an order for a flex farm themselves, and they're going to put it hopefully in this middle school commons area, and it's going to be a great instructional tool. We've had elementary students come and take a look at it in the high school, so we are very lucky to be all connected. And so they went and visited and talked about root systems and talking about plants in the middle school. Science teachers were taking a look at it. They used it in biology class and a botany class at the high school level. All of these tools, all these classes, excuse me, can use this singular tool. And it's been great. So we just cleaned it up right before we went on spring break, and we'll start another planting cycle that'll take us to the end of the school year. And so I'll get to end the school year with a bag or two or three of fresh lettuce and basil that I can enjoy some really amazing salads with. So I definitely recommend it. I couldn't be happier. Check it out. Reach out to me if you have any questions about it, because I set it up with a student, super easy to build. Couldn't recommend it more. When we look at digital, one of the things I want to give a shout out to is Adobe Creative Cloud Express. For those of you that maybe used Adobe Spark in the past, this is Adobe Spark Plus. So they've rebranded and they've added some awesome features, Adobe Creative Cloud Express. All of my students have it and use it as part of our learning, as part of our creation tools. And so web-based, it's completely free. And then if your school already has an Adobe account, like they use Acrobat Reader and things of that nature, every single kid can get a pro account for free. Single sign-in with Google, which is great. My kids use it to create some amazing things. Student created website using Creative Cloud Express as part of their Minecraft project. They actually created a website as they were showing off a redesign of a portion of our school, which I thought was really neat. Another great web tool to talk about is Minecraft Education Edition. It has been wonderful to have in my class. It's been wonderful to use for science teachers, English teachers, social studies teachers, across the board. This is a tool that can be used everywhere. Math teacher was just using it in class, and so normally my class is the one where I introduce Minecraft with my sixth graders, but the math teacher got to it first, and so she was using it. The kids were exploring different ways to count and lump blocks together and understanding just the division and how that all works, which I thought was brilliant. It's a great plan. There are tons of great resources on there in Minecraft Education Edition. If you Google a little bit, tons of great lesson plans that dive into, history, ecology. I have kids do big projects in 7th and 8th grade that explore the different types of problems that we're facing in the world and how they might create a solution for that. One is garbage in the oceans. Like, what type of device could you create that could clean the oceans? What would that look like? Sometimes it's simple silliness and having kids create vehicles, and someone created a Wienermobile because they're 7th and 8th graders, and that's something that's normally going to happen. Another thing that kids did was redesign a space in our school, and so they redesigned a very underused outdoor space, and a lot of them came up with these amazing ideas for a teacher's lounge or a study area or like a cafe place for people to be and hang out. We came up with some amazing examples. This is an example of students creating something for a book that we read or a short story that we read. And so we create a scene from the story that is like meaningful. So this is the example that we have here. I wonder if anyone can figure this out. Like, if you're recording this or watching the recording, hit pause, think about it for a second and see if you can think of it. I'll leave a quick pause here. There you go. That is the telltale heart for those of you who were spot on. Congratulations, you figured it out. That you can sort of see that weird vulture eye from the story, and that's the guy peeking from behind the door with the lantern. This was just super fun for kids to just demonstrate just sort of understanding and why you chose this, and having kids create things from stories that represent themes or symbols or motifs. It is just another great way to sort of engage those students in creation, and that's ultimately what we want. So Minecraft has been a wonderful tool in our school to really support making in all of our content areas. If you want to get really to the nitty-gritty of like coding, and interactive fiction is something that is phenomenal, as we use in our ELA classroom with our 6th graders. So interactive fiction is text-based game where you move the story along by telling the character, generally who you play, to do specific things like go north, pick this up, search for that. So it's all being coded. And so we use something called Trinket, and I used the Raspberry Pi base code for RPGs that they had, and then we turned it into something. So that link on the screen there is something that you can go to My Game, which is Escape from Werewolf House, and it's a code that you can totally copy and have fun with and tweak and make your own. But we did it in our 6th grade ELA class, and our emphasis on this was just overall plot, how we can plot out a story and how things work, but also proofreading, grammar, and things. All of those aspects of writing totally apply to coding. And so we had kids actually spending more time proofreading their code than they've ever spent proofreading any piece of writing they submitted in 6th grade, much to the teacher's chagrin. But it was great because it really emphasized the value and the need of proofreading, how you can closely proofread looking for specific errors. And so while the skeleton of the code is provided for you, and you're just filling in blanks and just repeating some of those lines of code over and over again to create a bigger, more broad game to play, the kids loved it. They were thoroughly on board with it, and they dove in a way that really kind of surprised me and how much I loved it. So huge fan, love it, highly recommend it. Definitely check out my code there. You can go to my website, thenerdyteacher.com. I actually have a walkthrough video that I had recorded on how to do it, how to use it. So definitely check that out too if you're interested in getting coding, especially in an ELA classroom, which I was told couldn't be done, but here we are, did it and worked great. Examples of skids that we're doing on the code. If you really are into coding too, if you're looking at visual games, Makedo Arcade is a great example there, arcade.makedo.com. So block-based coding, you can also do JavaScript, and you actually will create video games, which is super fun. So getting kids to create different types of games. I had a kid to create a history-style game where it's like a maze, and you're looking for different parts of the Bill of Rights and Constitution to put them all together. Super silly, super fun, but just, again, an understanding of what that is and just given an opportunity to create, which is something that we're always looking to do. So the big question, of course, is how do I get started? Well, you get started by creating space for making. That's what you need to do. You have to do that sometimes literally with your lesson planning, and sometimes figuratively. You just have to be open to the idea that kids can create. as part of this process. And of course, it doesn't have to be a physical space. You know, I'm very lucky to have a physical space that was one room, and we've expanded it to three. And I love this because this was this moment where I feel like I'd done it, I did it right. I looked up and I saw all of these young ladies working on code and working on 3D printing and physical computing with Raspberry Pi. And I dubbed this photo "Who Run the World," because one of my goals was to encourage more girls to be involved in STEM work, STEM projects. And all of these girls in this room were in there for fun. This wasn't for class projects. It wasn't for a specific assignment. This was, they had free time and spent some time in here just exploring the code. And that's so amazing. One of the young ladies in the back there is now one of the lead teammates on the robotics team at the high school now. And so, you know, she took this sort of interest in this and has really turned into something she super loves and is super passionate about. And I couldn't be happier. But, you know, creating a physical space is just one way to go about that. But it can be a mental space for you first. And that's one of the things I like to say is that, you know, it's so easy to look at all of this and feel completely overwhelmed and think, well, I'm never going to get started. I'm never going to be able to finish this. I'm never going to have what everyone else has or create the lessons that, you know, the nerdy teacher has or all these other people that are on social media have. It's the wrong approach. It's about saying, hey, what can I do for me to help my students? And taking it one lesson at a time. And so for me, one of the things I love to do is just make sure I provide examples to my students that I'm still making, I'm still creating. You know, this is an example of a variety of mallets that I've made. And I do this for a few reasons. One, I love to take different approaches to the same thing. Two, super great for my mental health, my anxiety. And I love to make these things and kids watch me and they go, what are you doing? And I explain it and they get really excited. At one point, a student's like, I'm going to make my own. I'm like, okay, man, let's go make you your own mallet. And the math and the geometry and all of that that goes into creating these pieces, you know, the kid had to explore, right? And so he's learning these concepts that if he was just told in math class, like, here are the formulas, memorize these, there'll be a test, he wouldn't know them nearly as well as, you know, I heard him say, oh, I covered this in class and now I'm using it and now I remember it and then I had a test and then I remembered it because I made the mallet. And I'm like, that is awesome. That's like teacher, like the music to my ears, right? You know, while I can only cover like so much in a short period of time and I've already spent 45 minutes talking about all the different things you can do, and it can definitely feel overwhelming. One of the ways that you can sort of pace yourself, of course, is by checking out any of my books. If you want to start a makerspace, your starter guide to makerspaces is definitely the place to go. It walks you through the process that I went through and all the mistakes and, you know, successes that I had. If you're thinking more about that mental aspect of making, you know, the maker mentality is where I highly recommend you start, because it really gives you an opportunity to think about what is making, you know, for me, but not only that, but what is it for a student and what is it for an administrator? So I really approach it from the three different ways we look at education. And then my newest one, Beyond the Poster Board, really dives deep into project-based learning. Now, my examples are all ELA examples because I spent 15 years as an ELA teacher, but the concepts that we talk about in that book are applicable to all content areas. And so while, again, it says ELA, really works for anyone and everyone, and I highly recommend it, not just because it's my book, but because I've had people use it and talk to me about how helpful it was in math class and science class and things of that nature. So I definitely recommend those as well. But most importantly, I recommend you just reaching out if you have questions. You know, reach out to me and say, hey, I saw your presentation. I have a question about using this, or I want to do that. Definitely reach out, because that is really when I feel most helpful, is when I can work one-on-one. Just like we as teachers, we feel most helpful is when we can be one-on-one with the students. So I encourage you to reach out to me on the Twitters at The Nerdy Teacher and on Instagram at The Nerdy Teacher. You can find me there. And of course, checking out at Demco as well. You want to check them out to see a lot of my stuff that I'm continuously posting on there, blogs, product recommendations, tons of Nerdy Teacher related content on the website as well. That's definitely worth checking out, because it's okay to feel like you don't know where to start. and it's okay to look at resources to get you headed in the right direction. It's what I did, and now I'm happy and very lucky to be able to share that with all of you. So we'll turn it over. If there are any other questions, we can get to those. Otherwise, everyone can get back to enjoying their spring break for the final few days.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much, Nick, for that presentation. I know it definitely got me excited about a lot of ideas, and for sure jealous that I didn't have a lot of those opportunities when I was going to school or have an instructor like you. I haven't seen any questions come in, so I'll just remind people that if they do have them, they're welcome to follow up across social media and reach out to the Demco team or yourself in order to get some of those questions answered, no matter how granular they may be. And if you attended today's session, again, you'll be getting an email with this recording in about a week. So thanks everyone for coming, and we're just getting some messages thanking you for participating with us today, Nick. So again, thank you, and we look forward to seeing what else you do.
Thank you, everyone. Everyone take care, and I hope to see you all online. Goodbye, everyone.